Okay, so we started the recording for people who couldn't make it today so that we have a record, and we'll send out this link in the email that goes out on Friday. So let's go ahead and get started for our meeting today. My name is Bob Longmire. I'm with Public Sector Personnel Consultants. We're the ones doing the classification and compensation study. So I'll walk through a little bit about what that is, a little bit about what that isn't, and then have some time to ask and answer any questions people may have on the group. Like I said before, you can send, if you have a question, you can send it directly to me in the chat function, or you can post it to the group, and we'll get to those here in a minute. So like I said, my name is Bob Longmire with Public Sector Personnel Consultants. All that we really do is personnel consulting for the public sector. You know, as a firm, we've been doing this maybe 30, 40 years, and we get to do somewhere on the order of 30 studies a year. We do a lot of work in California, Colorado, Texas, New Mexico. So we kind of travel all over the country, and we really specialize in classification and compensation. This is all that we do. Basically, to break that down, I think the easiest way to think about it is the study is designed to answer 3 questions for every job at the city. So if you can filter everything in this process through these 3 questions, it'll be really helpful. First, does your job title make sense? Number 2, does your job description accurately reflect what you do? And then third, what's the market going rate? If you were to go do this somewhere else, what would they pay you? That's what we've been tasked with answering. So maybe right up front, it's really helpful to talk about what the study is not. You know, so kind of as you can guess from those 3 questions we're trying to answer, none of this is a staffing needs analysis. You know, I have an unfortunate name of being Bob in HR, and everybody thinks I'm from Office Space and I'm going to move their stapler, right? That's not what this process is. We're not here for anyone to be let go. We're not here for any salaries to be reduced. This is not a performance review. We're not here to say, are you good at your job? We're here to learn directly from you what it is that you do. You have an opportunity to teach us about your job so that we can answer those 3 questions. We can suggest an updated job title. You know, maybe your job title is good. Maybe we need to update the job title. Number 2, maybe we need to update the job description, right? Everybody's 4 favorite words on a job description: other duties as assigned. How much time are you spending on those other duties as assigned? How much of your time is accurately reflected and captured from the job description? Maybe your job description is perfect and we don't need to change it and everything's on board. Perfect, awesome. You know, we're not a fan of change for change's sake. So if everything is good, if everything looks like it should be, then we're all set. But basically we want to try to answer those 3 questions. And then finally, what's the going market rate? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So again, notice I didn't say, you know, any kind of staffing needs where we're going through to say, hey, you have 4 people, but right now, if you were to let this person go and just work these other 3 people harder, you could say, you know, that's not the conversation we're having. We're here to try to understand the jobs so that we can suggest it. I know there's some represented positions. You know, nothing we do supersedes the bargaining process. Just because I put it in Excel doesn't make it so. However, this is meant to be a healthy, open, collaborative environment where you can have access to the data. That data can live at the table and be discussed and bargained over. So a couple thoughts there, maybe right up front. Nobody's being let go. No salaries are being reduced. It's not a negative kind of process. However, on the other hand, don't go buy a new truck. Don't expect a huge windfall. The best advice I can give any employee is don't expect anything as a result of this study. Now, having done enough of these studies, I can tell you, somebody's going to be behind market. Someone's salary is going to need to be adjusted. Who, how many, how much, by what amount, how much budget does the city have available? All of those things are unanswerable at this point. So I don't want anyone to feel like we're promising anything or that, you know, we're guaranteeing any of those kind of results. So the best advice I can give you up front is don't expect a huge windfall. Every employee that I've ever met and ever talked with when we get the chance to do interviews or desk audits or ride-alongs, you know, every employee believes they are behind market. You know, I've never met somebody who's like, thank goodness you're here. I go into HR every 2 weeks. I tell them I'm overpaid and Joe just won't take money away from me, right? Like, that's not the conversation. So best advice I can give anybody is don't expect anything. However, there's a possibility that some salary ranges may need to be adjusted. So we'll talk about all of that here at the end. So maybe right up front, again, remember the purpose of the study is classification, compensation. All right, let me jump into the classification side of things. Classification is the first two questions. Classification says, does the job title make sense? Does the job description accurately reflect what you do? Those are the first two questions from classification. Now, in order to do that, in order to answer those questions, we need to understand what it is that you do. Kind of straightforward, really. So in order to do that, every employee has the opportunity to complete a PAQ, a position analysis questionnaire. That's how we hear directly from the employees what it is that you do, so that we're not guessing. We're not coming into your city saying we have a fancy job title and we know what you do and here's how to run your city. That's not the direction the information flows. We're not telling you, you're telling us. We're trying to jump on the moving train that is your life and document it. So that's the goal, that's the process, and what we're trying to do. So ultimately, we need to hear from the employees. You got about 1,700 employees, depending on how you count. They represent plus or minus 500, 575 job titles. So we want to hear from everybody. You have the opportunity to complete this as a group. So I know we have some sworn positions, some uniformed positions. If you want to work on it as a group, give me one questionnaire with 100 people's names on them. That works great for me. If everybody does something a little bit different, that's okay too. You can work on them individually. However you want to do that is fine by us. We just want to make sure that we have an accurate understanding of every job title at the city and that we know the employees who are in that job title. So if you do what somebody else does and you want to work on this questionnaire as a group, that's awesome. You can do that. If you feel like what you do is a little bit different, a little bit unique, a little bit has its own flavor maybe, then go ahead and complete a questionnaire individually. It's not meant to be a test. It's not meant to be a writing assignment. You don't get extra points for suffering in silence. So at that point, you can maybe print out your existing job description, cross it out, mark it up, write on it, however you want to start this process. Again, works for us. An email will go out on Friday with a little bit more details, and I'll cover the PAQ here at the end of the meeting. But basically, I kind of want to hammer home this idea that this is your opportunity to tell us what you do. This is your chance to have a voice in the process. Please take the PAQ seriously. That's the best advice I can give you. This is something that most organizations do maybe every 4 to 6 years. So it's not something that happens very often. So please take the time, fill out the questionnaire, do the best that you can. If you need to talk to your supervisor, if you need to talk to a coworker, however you want to do that is fine by us. So complete that questionnaire. Then we might have the opportunity to meet with some employees, kind of walk around, say, hey, show me something. Tell me a little bit more about your job, and do some on-site meetings, some kind of walk and talks. That looks like us carrying around your questionnaire going, hey, I had a question about this. Can you give me a little bit more details? Again, it's not meant to be a test. It's not an interview or anything like that. It's just a chance to learn more about your jobs so that we can answer those 3 questions. Does the job title make sense? Does the job description accurately reflect what you do? And then third, can we find your job out in the market so that we can answer kind of what's the market going rate for this position? Okay, that's the classification side of things. Let me talk about a couple outcomes and then I'll pause for questions. A couple outcomes of classification. Maybe your job title changes. We want to have consistency when we use, 1, 2, 3, senior, lead, supervisor, specialist, coordinator, analyst, technician, manager, director, assistant director. We want to make sure that we have consistency and we're calling the same thing in various departments. So titling protocol. Maybe we have a cosmetic surface level title change. Maybe we have something more complex. Maybe we get these questionnaires back and 2 people who are doing different things or who have different job titles, it turns out they're doing exactly the same thing. And it's just called one thing in this department and it's called a different thing in a different department. So maybe you'll see that we recommend merging those titles together. Where you used to have 2 titles, we now have 1. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you have the same job title as somebody else, but lo and behold, you're doing wildly different things. So we split those job titles apart, and where there was 1 title, there's now 2 titles. So Very common outcomes of classification. Updated job title, maybe updated job description so that it more accurately reflects what you do. So I'll pause there for a second. Any questions on the classification side of things? I got a note to repeat the 3 questions. So yeah, happy to do that. Again, it's, does the job title make sense? Does the job description accurately reflect what you do? And can we find this job out in the market so that we can answer the question, what's the market going with? If you were to go do this somewhere else, what would they pay you? So those are the 3 things that we're trying to answer for all 575 job titles and all 1,700 people. And you can start to see how this is a daunting task and start to see why this is something the city does maybe every 4 to 6 years. Okay, so I didn't see any questions come in on the chat. So I'll go ahead and jump into the salary survey side of things. We will have another break here at the end for some more questions before we get into that. Oh, sorry, I do have a question in the chat. Is there a way to bring up, hold on one second here, let me find it. Is there a way to bring up issues with my coworker's job title and job description? We don't have a way for you to say, hey, can you look at so-and-so's position? However, supervisors can do that. So supervisors can flag titles to say, hey, listen, we're having troubles with, accountant 1 or maintenance worker 2 or gas utility specialist or, whatever the example might be. So raise the issue to your supervisor, have them flag it for us to review, then, kind of tap that person on the shoulder, say, hey, make sure you do a good job on your questionnaire, fill it out, take it seriously. You can even help them with it. But we don't have a way to have employees flag someone else's job. Okay, got a couple more questions here. When you say market, does it talk government, private sector? I'll get into that in a minute. The answer is yes. Can staff suggest appropriate job titles that are more industry related? Yes. If you think that you have a good suggestion on your job title, I'll show you where you can put it, where you can give us some feedback. Not saying we agree or disagree. We get some people who say, oh, I'm acting city manager. Well, yeah, okay, hold on now. But yes, so you can always give us suggestions. You can always give us your input, your understanding. And we're always open to that input and try to review it honestly and critically. Can you request in-person meetings for your section? Yes. Shoot HR an email. I'll show you where that email is. And yes, we can meet and talk and kind of go through some of those. It's always a good opportunity. If anybody wants to raise their hand and say, yeah, we need to look at this one. Now, I will say, I'm interested in that conversation from make sure that we have an updated job title and an accurate job description. I will have no idea on compensation at that point in time. So a lot of times people want to meet and just tell us how underpaid they are. At that point in the process, I don't know if that's true or not. So I won't be able to have much input at this point on your salary. However, I am open to learning about what your job does so that we can find it out in the market. So I'm always up for productive conversations around what it is that you do. Yes, private sector. Okay, perfect. Okay, so those were all the questions that we had from the first part of the meeting. Let's go ahead and jump into usually what people care the most about, salary survey. So you guys are a full service city. I'm sure that's not a surprise when I say that. You got police, you got fire, you have a gas utility. You're a little bit uniquely located in that you're kind of the big player on the block. So what that looks like to me is we're going to have some local comparators that are maybe just a little bit smaller. We're going to have some regional comparators around the state where we have other large employers in the state. And then we're going to have some maybe more regional, some Arizona, some Colorado, other organizations that have a gas utility. Also with the private sector. Some jobs are easily portable to the private sector. Police officer, not so much. So some jobs will be able to have private sector data. Some jobs will only have public sector data. Some will have a mix of more local, regional, statewide. So we try to take a large sample size from the market so that, and we can request their job descriptions, their org plans, their benefit documents so that we can answer the question, how do you stack up salary schedule to salary schedule, benefits to benefits, where do you align? And be able to answer that question. Now, where it starts to get interesting is, what do we do about it? That's an answer I don't have yet. We'll talk about some possible outcomes of the salary survey side of things here in a minute, but there's really two parts to a salary survey. One is fact finding. Hey, what's your job worth? If you were to go do this, what would they pay you? The second part of that is, now what? How do we get caught up to market? That's a conversation with counsel. That's a budget conversation. That's a bargaining conversation. That's a lot of moving parts. And the outcome of that, the timeline of that, the budgetary impact of that is something I don't know at this time. You know, imagine if we go out and do this salary survey and we find out there's only one job behind market. It's 5% behind market and there's one person in it. Well, that's super easy to fix. We don't even need to talk about that. Like, we don't need to budget it. We can just do it. However, you know, imagine if we find out the opposite. Oh man, all of our jobs are 12, whatever the big number is. That's harder to address. That's going to take maybe multiple years to correct. So what we find and how we fix it really is dictated on what we find. So back to my conversation before, don't go buy a new truck. However, it's really a good process that the city takes the time to look at this. So a little bit in the weeds, what this looks like is something that looks like this for all the jobs at the city. How do you stack up salary schedule to salary schedule? How do you stack up total compensation? You know, what's the value of your job? What's the salary range midpoint? How do we align salary schedule to salary schedule? And what does that look like? So some common outcomes, and then I'll pause for questions on salary before we jump into walking through the PAQ. So a couple outcomes on the salary survey side of things. Maybe we move jobs faster than we move employees. So let me explain that for a minute. Pretend I have a situation where the job is 10% behind market. So we go through the salary survey and the salary range for this job is too low. Maybe we need to shift that salary range to the right so that we have a job that is now, instead of 10% behind, we're caught up on our salary schedule. Now, let's say we have employees and they're maxed out. Well, we don't need to increase their salary by 10% just to remax them out on day one. They can now earn in a higher range and earn towards that new maximum. So we can maybe shift that range faster than we increase an employee's individual salary. Now take that example and flip it on its head. If I got a job that's 10% behind market and I have two employees who are sitting on minimum, well, now we need to give them 10%. So also, let's pretend we shift these ranges. I don't want to have the 1 year, 5 year, and 10-year employee all sitting on minimum making the same thing. I'm not a fan of a world in which the employee training someone makes the same amount as the trainee. I don't like that. So we're very sensitive to what's kind of what we refer to as horizontal compression. So where do we line up with all the people who have the same job title as you? Do we have separation through that range, right? Horizontal compression. I'm also sensitive to vertical compression. Do I have accurate incentives and good separation between a 1, a 2, a 3, a senior, a lead, a supervisor, a manager? Are we giving you enough of an incentive to move up the food chain and take on additional responsibilities? So we're looking at all of those kind of factors. So again, back to my conversation, don't go buy a new truck. This is not a one size fits all, everybody gets the same amount COLA. This is a strategic targeting of jobs based on market going rates so that we can know and have a conversation around how do we need to get caught up. Last thing I'll maybe say here is you didn't get into this situation in a year. Maybe it takes more than a year to get out of it. I don't know that. However, I do always want to throw out the possibility that if we find a really big problem, maybe we can't fix it all in one budget cycle. Maybe it takes a couple of years to fix it, but the conversation is stick with us. You're a valued employee. We're trying to make this right. Stay here. Don't go anywhere. Let us get some time to get this addressed and fixed. So that's not an uncommon situation where we essentially, one way to think about it is you run out of money before you run out of problem. So sometimes that happens. Again, I don't know, but I do want to kind of say that's not an uncommon outcome. All right, let me pause here for questions on the salary survey side of things. I'm going to jump into the PAQ and then I'll pause for questions at the end one more time. So questions around, do we take into account years of service? Yes, but not in the salary survey. So let me answer that question a little bit more directly. So when we look at the salary survey, we're looking at the salary ranges only. We're not surveying actual salaries. So we're saying, what's the salary range minimum? What's the salary range maximum? We're looking right down the middle, midpoint to midpoint. How do I compare? How does my salary range midpoint compare? That tells me what range to put a job into. So now I know the job needs to be in range 10, okay? I can do that with no employees in the job. We can do that for vacant positions. Now, to your question, yes, I now need to say, okay, I have 15 people in this position. How do I make sure that they're not all on minimum? The answer to that is time in job. The answer to that is performance ratings. Any kind of factors like that we can use to make sure I don't have that horizontal compression that I talked about, where I got a 1-year, 5-year, and 10-year employee all making the same thing. So yes, we take that into account, but that is not during the salary survey. That's answering the question, how do I move people through their current range? Not using it in the salary survey allows us to take out a lot of variables. You know, you can think about if you have a manager who's just promoted to a supervisor versus a manager who's been there for 15 years. Those are going to be really different market rates. And we want to try to remove some of that variability and volatility from the market survey. Okay, great question. All right, I think there was one more. Texas, question mark? Yes, I think there are some comparators from Texas. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I believe so. But yes, we're looking at those comparators to kind of say who is around us, who is like us, who has similar jobs, who provides similar services. Okay, good questions. We'll pause here at the end. We got about maybe another 10, 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, maybe start thinking about them. I'm going to go into the PAQ now. So if you remember, this is the voice, your voice in the process. This is the way that you tell us directly what it is that you do. So on Friday, an email is going to come out from HR. It's going to have a link in it. We do the PAQs electronically. So I'll tell you the 2 most common questions we get here in a minute. But this link that comes from HR, every time you click it, it will start a new questionnaire. I'll tell you how to save your questionnaire and come back to it later. But this email is going to be for starting a new questionnaire. You can work on them as a group, like I said before. Print out your existing job description, mark it out, cross it up, work on it with your supervisor, a coworker, however you want to get us this data works well for us. The email that goes out on Friday is going to have a link to your existing job description, and you can print that out like I had said. So all employees, please complete your questionnaire by Friday, July 1st. So you got some time. It should take maybe 2 hours. Work on it on city time. You know, this is something that I don't want you to have to take home, do at night when you're tired. So try to maybe get started on it, read through it. I'll show you all the questions from the PAQ here in a minute. Start thinking about this. And like I said, you know, work on it however you feel comfortable. Then supervisors have a week to review and provide comments on their PAQ, on the employees' PAQs. Supervisors cannot change anything the employees wrote. The first pages are the employees' understanding of the position, and we'll look at that here in a second. So kind of jumping into it functionally, page 1 looks like select your name from a drop-down list. We do this because if you ask employees to type their names, their job titles, their emails, we get a lot of data entry errors. So we pre-populate this from the payroll file. That being said, if the payroll file was not accurate, that's okay. You can edit the information in page 2. That's maybe the most common question we get is, there's an old job title. My supervisor's name is not correct. Those things. That's okay. You can edit it on page 2. The PAQ even says that. And then on the PAQs, there's videos that play on each page of me narrating what we're looking for in the PAQ. And I say it there in the videos. And we're going to get 10, 15, 20 people who email saying, my name's not right. That's okay. You can edit it on page 2. So go through name, email, job title, supervisor's names, just double check everything, make sure we have accurate records. And then it says, are you working on this as part of a group? If you're working on it on part of a group, it'll take you to the page where you can add employees' names. Works just like Instagram. You can tag somebody in it, start typing their name, and after 3 letters, it'll auto-suggest from the payroll file, and you can add them to the questionnaire. First couple pages are the hardest. They're the blankest. They require the most maybe comparative writing. And again, think about your job description. First question is the position's purpose. Give me maybe 3 to 5 sentences. If I were to say, hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm Bob. What do you do? Put that here. We have job description writers that we kind of lock in a closet and throw food to. They'll make it sound like it belongs on a job description. You just give us the content, give us kind of what we're looking for on what the position's purpose is. And again, it doesn't need to sound like it belongs on a job description. If you're having a hard time getting started, think about your existing position's purpose on the job description and go from there. All right, here's maybe the second most common question we get. If you click this link, save and continue later, it will put a drop down. You type in your email address and it will send a new link just for you to that email address. It comes from Survey Gizmo, or sometimes it comes from Alchemer. That's the online platform we use to host this survey. So all those details will be in the email that goes out, but you will get a new link that is just for you that says, click this link to come back to your survey. So use that to come back to it at a later point in time. You only need to click that once. That link is good. If you forget, that's okay. If you forget to click that link, you work on it for an hour, you accidentally close it out, it's okay. We have all the data. We never lose anything. Nothing is ever lost. Just send an email to HR. I think they have an email set up, which is classcomp@loscruces.org. Respond to that email address. They'll get a hold of us. We'll send you your link. It's no big deal. So that save and continue later button is your friend. This next page is probably the hardest. It's the most blank. It, again, requires you to put some thought into your job and how to break down those functions, those tasks, those duties. So think about your existing job description. It's got bullet points. This is where we're going to generate those bullet points from. This is where we're going to say, we spend, 30% of our time doing routine maintenance on city facilities, or, whatever the examples are. So give us a percentage of time over here on the left. Then on the right, give me maybe 3 to 5 sentences about what you do with those tasks. So again, this is the bullet points on your job description. So try to give us some thought into this. Percentage of time can be a difficult one. Maybe your job is highly routine and you do the same thing every day. Maybe you've been here for 15 days or 15 years and no day has ever been the same. So think in terms of maybe a week, a month, a year. If your job is highly seasonal and changes summer to fall, maybe we need a little bit more time and need to think of percentages of the time in a year. So start to get a little bit easier. Remember, we got this save and continue later button up at the top. That's your friend. Think about your knowledge, your skills, your information sources. What do you need to be knowledgeable in? What do you need to be skilled in to do this job? Again, we don't need like an exhaustive list, but give us an idea of if there's any governing entities, agencies, authorities, if there's any kind of like building codes, municipalities, laws, regulations you need to know or be aware of or be compliant of. Let us know what those look like there. Start to see this gets a little bit easier, a little bit of check the box, fill in the blank, those kind of approaches. Let us know your thoughts on education for the position, minimum years of experience, minimum education. I'm a fan of minimums. If somebody with a doctorate and 25 years of experience wants to do this job for the salary range that's offered, great, we can hire them. However, if you require a doctorate, maybe we are not getting enough candidates to apply. So give us your thoughts, not necessarily saying we agree or disagree, but give us your idea of, do I have to have a degree in engineering? What's required, what's the experience, and then certifications. Do I have to have any certifications to do this job? Do I have to have them day one? Can you hire me without the certifications, without the licenses, without the registrations, and then train me to get them, and I can get them over the next 60 days, 6 months, a year, whatever that time frame is. And then, or do I need those licenses day one? So give us an idea of what that looks like. All right, moving on a little bit. Last section, we want to get into what are the level of decisions that you're making. We want to start to get into authority, autonomy, accountability, matters of significance. What happens if you make a bad decision? How are you getting instructions from your supervisor? How detailed are they? Are you the subject matter expert? If you have a question, who do you go to? If you don't know the answer, are you the only one in the building? And if you don't know the answer, you have to go outsourced, or can you get help on these questions? So that's a little bit of what we're looking for. And then the last question here is, anything else? Is there anything we missed? Is there anything we forgot to ask you? There's also a section where you can attach documents. Is there anything that you have that you think would be helpful for us to know about? You can go ahead and attach them to the PAQ there, and we'll take a look and kind of read through them. Finally, if you supervise people, say yes, it'll bring you to this last page. Give us the names and job titles of people who report to you, and then go through a quick hire and fire matrix to say, are you the person who assigns their work, reviews it? Are you approving sick time? Do you do the scheduling? Do you do the training? Do you sign off on the work as being complete? What's the relationship with the people you supervise look like? Finally, from there, go ahead and click and drag to sign it. And then once you leave the signature page, once you click next, it's going to submit the PAQ for your supervisor's review and approval. So supervisors, you're going to get an email that looks like this. It's going to have the PAQ as attached to the email, and then it's going to have a link that you can click on to go and be brought to the last page where you can give your comments, your review, your feedback of the position. So a couple thoughts here. Supervisors, this is your opportunity to tell us, hey, we're having a hard time recruiting and retaining. As soon as we hire somebody and they get the license, in the next 3 months, they leave and jump ship and go somewhere else. This is your chance to give us some feedback on the positions. Okay, I walked through that maybe a little quick. Again, link is going to go out on Friday in an email from HR, and then please give us the feedback there. Okay, so question is, New Mexico has the highest minimum wage compared to surrounding states, and it's going to go up. How does that impact comparisons? A couple things. Minimum wage is the hot topic everywhere we go. Minimum wage is rising faster than other sections. So remember how I talked about vertical compression, separation between a 1, a 2, a 3, a senior, a lead? A lot of times minimum wage creates upward pressure from the bottom that condenses, that compresses, that compacts those ranges. So part of this process is to then readjust and separate out into meaningful separation between jobs. So that's one of the reasons why you do these studies is minimum wage. However, surrounding areas, surrounding communities, surroundings in other states, the market is what it is. If we're ahead on a job that is minimum wage, if we're ahead in the market, okay, great, it is what it is. And then the private sector tends to weigh in on that conversation and say, well, you're not really ahead because somebody can go work at McDonald's and make X, and be air conditioned all day. So we're pretty sensitive to those conversations around the minimum wage and the compaction that it can create. Okay, so question on hiring, kind of that matrix here for supervisors. There's a question on saying like promoting. There's a section to say, I recommend. So just say that you recommend, because yes, in a city environment, you don't really have the authority to say, yes, let's promote this person to that. However, when we're talking about the difference between a 1, a 2, a 3, some of that can be done by lower level managers, department directors, that kind of thing. So where that falls is what we're trying to ascertain in this process. How long do we think this is going to take before we get our report to HR and City Council? I think we're looking in the 90 to 120 day period before we have our costing projections to HR and to Council. So, you kind of think about this as the first part of it. We got to give you guys 3 weeks to complete this. So we're right now at this portion, we're going out and we're requesting data from comparators, starting to build the market data, starting to put all that information together. Then we got to read through, north of 575 PAQs, get everybody accounted for. So it's a lengthy process. So I won't know anything next week. It takes us a little bit of time. Okay, here. Will the supervisors get an opportunity to review the PAQs submitted and commented on? Yes. So every employee who reports to you, you will get an email that looks like this. That email will say, please give us your input, your guidance. It'll take you to the last page of the questionnaire. You can make comments. When you click submit, an email will go out to the employee and to yourself with a copy of the completed questionnaire so that everybody has it. On the PAQs for minimum requirements in education, do we enter the current job description or what we believe it should be moving forward? Give us what you believe it should be. Not saying we agree or disagree, but we want to know your input, your feedback, your suggestions. Give us what you believe the minimum requirements for the job should be on that section. Okay, good questions, everybody. All right, and that's all I have for today. I'm going to hang out for another few minutes to answer any questions that come in on the chat. If there's any questions you didn't want to ask in front of the group, you can ask me, kind of hang around. I'll stop the video here in another minute or two, and then you can ask me any questions you have. And I'll just kind of keep answering questions as they come through, but feel free to drop at any time. Next question that came in was, since we have several employees with the same job title, can we designate one staff member to fill out the survey? Yes, you can work on them as a group. So you have the opportunity to do that. I don't want to say somebody draws the short straw, but a lot of times we find it's helpful if all the employees print out their job descriptions, write on them, mark it up, and then everybody sits around a computer for 2 hours and says, hey, I think about this, I think about this. You kind of work on it as a group, a little bit of a creating, writing group assignment. Or yes, you can have one person do it and just make sure we get feedback from everybody. I want to make sure everybody at least agrees with what is in the PAQ. I don't want anybody to come back and to say, I didn't get to speak for myself. I didn't get to do it. So I want to make sure that we have that opportunity for everybody. CC said, if we forget something, can we add it later? That's always a little bit tricky, but yes, there's a way to do it. I don't want to open that up for all 1,700 people because then we just get flooded with those. But yes, if there's something that is critical that didn't make it onto the PAQ and you roll over at 2 a.m., sometime in August, and you're like, oh my goodness, I forgot to tell them this. Yes, you can email HR. The email address is classcomp@loscruces.org, and they can get that information over to us. what do we do? The email address here, I'll put it in the chat. It is classcomp@cruces.org. I think that's, I know it's class.comp is the email. I think I got the, you guys know the end of your email address better, but it's classcomp@loscruces.org is the email address. Okay. All right. Good questions, everybody. Anything else before I end the video here today? No. Okay. All right. I will go ahead and turn off the recording here. Give me a second.